Hey guys, getting back on a tree here. So this is our plum tree. We checked it last week and we found 2 plums that were ripe. The rest were not quite ready yet. We had another look today, found some ripe ones, so we'll finish harvesting it.
They're really yummy.
Yeah. So the way you can tell if they're ripe or not is you'll feel how squishy they are. So all you do is hold between your fingers, give it a little squeeze. Not too heavy on the squeeze, otherwise you'll just destroy it. But you should feel a little bit of squish. So it should have a little bit of give to it, not too much. And it shouldn't be rock hard. If it's too hard, don't pick it yet.
Letting fruit or vegetables naturally ripen on the vines or the trees is the best way to harvest, because the sugars develop, everything develops, and you don't have that chance of tartness or spoilage, and then taking a chance on if it'll be as sweet as what it would be if you just let it ripen up after harvesting.
Yep. So these plums are called Santa Rosa. They've got nice red flesh and nice red, plum red outside. They're super juicy and extremely yummy.
They sort of taste like the sweetness of the Tegan Blue plums with a tart finish, like, if that makes sense.
We've got one hiding back here. But this one feels a little bit tougher, so we might leave that for one more day. Hopefully the birds don't get to it. And I believe that's all the plums we got. So we got 8 today, and they're going to be nice and juicy, very enjoyable over the next couple of days. So this plum tree is only 1 year old as well. So this is the first harvest we've got off it. As you can see, it's a fast grower, how tall it is already. We do find around here, because we've got the nature reserve and stuff nearby, that we do have to net it when it does start fruiting. Once it's finished fruiting, we can unnet it and we can let it go and do its thing.
Okay, so we had some leftover hamburger buns. We've turned some of it into garlic bread. The rest of it we're going to dice and dehydrate for breadcrumbs, for homemade stovetop stuffing, and if we want croutons in salad or anything like that, they just need to be dressed. We don't like any waste in our house, but we also don't want to keep eating the same old stuff over and over again, so we try and come up with creative ideas of how to use up what we have. Okay, so we just dehydrate these the same as we would the tomatoes, anything like that. It gets put on 45 degrees. I put them on 19 hours. I'll check them tomorrow and see if they need any more time, but you don't have to do anything else to them. You can season them, but I don't like to store anything that has a layer of fat on, because fat goes rancid, so I prefer to do it plain and then season them or dress them as needed, so that I can store them in my jars and know that they're always going to be good. Okay, so afterwards as well, I do have the last bits of my tomatoes from yesterday's harvest to go in, but I have a customer really soon, so I'll have to get back to it. The best thing about this Sunbeam dehydrator is that you can pull the door open and load it and it doesn't affect anything. So put the door these are the bread bits that we put in the other day. So they're all nice and hard now. So I'm going to store them in this big jar. Start using them in my recipes because there's a lot of new recipes that I'd like to try. And they've got stovetop recipes and stovetop stuffing in them. And obviously I'm going to do mine homemade, so there's no preservatives or anything in there. But my daughter's got into cooking now. She really loves it. So a really lovely way that we spend time together is by going through recipe books. So she'll be picking some out, we'll be doing some together, and then using up different ingredients and having some fun in the kitchen during homeschool. So as we have leftover hamburger buns and things like that, I have been using them up in breakfast that we call egg clouds, which is just egg bread that my mum used to make when I was a child, and I've been making it with mine. But we're looking on expanding into creative ways and fun things that we can do with leftover makeovers. So this is what we're doing for now. Next that's going to go in the dehydrator is some roasted pumpkin, and I'll store some in jars, and then I'll store some in oil for antipasto because we've had a bumper crop last year that's still in our freezer and we have to make room for this year's harvest. So I'll show you that next. So these have been dry roasted, which means that there's no fat on them. The only thing that I put on these are my potato seasoning that I make from scratch. There will be a video at some point on that. It's just so that when it dehydrates, the fat doesn't go rancid in the jar, so that I can keep it for as long as I want to keep it. If you're going to roast for antipasto, so if it's going to go in oil in the fridge anyway, then I wouldn't worry about that. But this lot is going to go on my shelf, so I can use it in casseroles and soups and those sorts of things.
So I tried these out fresh from the oven earlier, and with a bit of seasoning that Tegan put on top, they are absolutely beautiful, and they'll have that flavour as well once they dehydrate.
And it's really good too, when you get homegrown pumpkins, they taste so much better than the shop. So, you know, I mean, we don't buy any produce anymore because we've worked our way up to producing our own fruit and our vegetables, but if you can get a bumper crop, it's such a shame to waste it. You know, like we give away things as well, like we give, a lot of our community gets a lot of our produce, but we have enough for our family so that we wouldn't ever have to eat store-bought, because there's no flavour and there's no nutrition.
That's something we noticed from day one of when we picked our first bit of fruit. I think it was an apple. Yeah, the taste of that apple was unlike any one that we've had before, because we've never had picked fresh, and we'll never go back.
And I grew up with homegrown tomatoes. My mum always grew tomatoes, so I've always preferred homegrown over store-bought anyway. But it's such a difference in quality and in taste. And now that we're getting older, we'd rather just have quality in every aspect of our life. And it all starts with food.
And ties in as well, you know, you've put the effort into growing the plant, looking after it, did the harvest yourself, and then you get to eat the fruits of your labour.
It's a greater satisfaction, especially when you've worked so hard and you get to relax with a glass of wine or something like that and just enjoy what you've created.
And if you haven't had it fresh off a tree or from the ground before, if you think from the shop something's juicy, you have it off the tree, it's twice as juicy, it's more flavour, it's crunchier, it's like a enhanced version of what you would from the shops.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. We've noticed too that like the food that we eat is more nutrient dense, so we don't actually eat as much. Like as what we used to. So you can sit down to a plate of dinner and be full, and it's just not as big portion.
Yeah, so before we started eating fresh and what we've grown, the plates, what you'd have on your plate, portion size would be a lot more.
Excessive.
Because there's no nutrients there. It's not high in fibre. You don't get your body's not getting what it needs, and so it's asking for more. Whereas when you're eating fresh produce
At its peak.
So it's got full nutrients inside, got all the fibre you need, you fill up faster, you feel better afterwards as well.
You wake up fresher.
You know, there's no preservatives, there's nothing strange on there like wax or something to...
Things that shouldn't be on food.
Yeah. You know exactly what's on there. There's no chemicals that you've used to grow it. No pesticides inside it. It's got, you know where the water source is coming from, everything, so...
And this is just like a great snack too. I love caramelised pumpkin. That looks burnt, but it's just... That piece is burnt. But that piece looks burnt. But it's so yummy. Like, it's just... All the sugar's caramelised and it goes sticky and it's so nice. It's like candy. Okay, so these were the tomatoes that were from the other day, and I couldn't get back to them because I got swamped with orders. But that's okay. They've lasted a day.
Yep.
Homegrown produce I would not put past a day. So if you're going to pick it and eat it, or pick it and process it, because they don't have the preservatives on them that store-bought do. So if you don't harvest and process, then you'll lose your harvest. So just if you're going to pick the tomatoes. If you can't pick and process, only harvest what you need for that day, so that nothing gets spoiled. But if you are going to harvest and save and process, then make sure you carve yourself out a day so you can dedicate that time to that project, so that things don't get in the way and things get lost. Because there's nothing worse than putting all that hard work in and then losing it. So.
And when you process it on the same day that you harvest, you're saving all those nutrients, crispness, the juices, everything. So yeah, it's well worth it.
Yeah. I'm not going to salt these tomatoes because they're going to go into that jar that you saw before with the sun-dried tomatoes in them, and there's plenty of salt from the other salted tomatoes in that. If I was going to put it into a fresh jar, I would salt these so it can add to the flavour of the oil. In here we have our tomatoes, in here we have a pumpkin. I'm just going to put it on, turn it on, 19.5 hours, 45 degrees, and let it go overnight. So these aren't ready yet, or that bit was. When they've got a snap to them, they're ready, so these are still quite bendy.
Yeah, they're not stiff and crunchy, they're still a bit pliable.
Yeah, so I'm going to put these in for probably another 12 hours. Might just go to 19 when it's done. And then I'll just put these in a macaroni jar. But
And that's the pumpkin, by the way, if you can't see.
Yeah. So this is the tomatoes. So this is our previous jar that we've already done. So because this is only a small amount, we're just going to put it straight back in that jar and let it do its thing.
And I've said this before on the other videos. If you see our previous one of how we made these sun-dried tomatoes, but they are extremely yummy.
They're very, very good. And we've been eating a lot of them. It is supposed to last the winter, but I don't see that happening.
No.
So then these are on the surface, the new ones, so I'll just give that a little bit of a swivel and then pop the lid on, put it in the fridge. These will go back into the dehydrator. Okay, so 19.5. Temperature is 45. That spare train just sits in there. Done. Okay, so see how that snaps? That means you can store it and it won't go moldy because the moisture level is not there. I will put some moisture absorbers into my jars just to be safe because I have excess, so I'm going to use them. But now really is the time to process and store any excess that you have. The prices of everything are going up, so whatever you can do for now to help your future self is the way to go. So this was a large cookie sheet filled up with diced roasted pumpkin, and because all the moisture content is gone, it's broken down to be probably a quarter of this jar. So if you dehydrate your excess produce, you can fit quite a lot in quite a small space. So happy food saving, guys.
Alright guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this harvest, hit the like button, and if you want to see what else we're doing out of time out here on our mini farm, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video.